Hey guys, Asher coming at you today in Raid Shadow Legends. Welcome to the video, guys. I'm glad to have you all here. Talking a little bit of RSL today. Today we're going to do something a little bit different here. I've chosen 5 epic champions for each of the traditional dungeons. Now, some of these epics you can definitely use on hard mode as well. We'll go through those as we talk about each specific epic champion. But I'm not repeating any champions on this list. So I've chosen 5 of the best epics, but I can only choose one area. So I'm not going to use like the same 7 champions and just keep picking them over and over again.
I was having so much fun.
I chose the best area to use them. I have some niche champions, some really good champions, some that you've heard of, maybe a few that you haven't heard of on today's list. I'm also going to record a follow-up video where we have the top 5 epics for Sand Devil, for Phantom Shogun's Grove, and for Iron Twins. Expect that either later on this week or next week, depending on the day that today's video goes live. In a few videos, in a few days. So that's going to be fun too. I'm also going to talk very briefly about the artifact sets and kind of how I would prioritize all of these dungeons, especially after the big artifact set rebalancing. By the way, I had a video with Scratch talking about all the artifact sets after the rebalancing a few weeks ago, and I think it's a really good one because it gets you acquainted with a bunch of artifact sets that you may have missed between the Forge and between all of the balance changes. But first, guys, I want to give a big shout out to today's video sponsor. It is Dungeon Hunter 6. You may be familiar with the franchise. It has been around since 2015, and the latest brand new installment did not disappoint. This is an ARPG game. It's really cool. It's got like a hack and slash, fast-paced vibe, and of course all those fantasy elements and kind of back-end hero collector vibe that we're used to as well. And the best part is it's absolutely free, so go ahead and scan the QR code on the screen right now or use my download link in the description below. So guys, the very first thing you need to know about Dungeon Hunter 6 is the unique boss mechanic. Over 100 bosses. The cool thing is when you defeat a boss, you can actually harness their powers. They can follow you around. They're like your pet. You can summon up to 3 at a time. You can take on their powers, and you can even shapeshift into them to harness their ultimate power. That is freaking cool. So let's be real, this game has a lot going on all the time. And the good news is it has a brand new 3D graphic performance engine that really makes for a stunning overall experience. We're talking skill animations, everything going on everywhere on the screen, and it handles it amazing, really. And the visuals in this game are absolutely stunning. They will not disappoint you. Now guys, honestly, I wish I had a lot more time to talk about this game. Let me know, maybe I'll have a whole dedicated video to this game at some point in the future because there's a lot to talk about here. But suffice it to say, quickly, rapid fire, there's Guild Wars already inside this game, right? So there's skill trees, there's Guild Wars, there's a lot of customization in this game already. It really blew me away. There's even a trade system and a live auction feature inside this game. And that's not all, guys. I have some goodies for you. Don't worry. If you download using my QR code or my link, you will get a really nice bonus package. You'll get 10 summoning scrolls, you'll get an SSR Lieutenant Demonic Wolf, and you'll get 1 accessory packed. But there's more! Use your game account to enter the Launch Lucky Spin event and possibly get your hand on some awesome great prizes like an iPhone 15 Pro Max, a PS5, an Apple Watch, and more starting October 15th, guys. Again, all the links you need are in the description below. Thank you so much, Dungeon Hunter 6, for sponsoring today's video. Anyway, guys, with all that said, let's start with good old Dragon's Lair. Dragon's Lair, where we're looking for speed gear primarily. It's generally seen to be like the starting dungeon of Raid Shadow Legends. That's not to say that you'll still spend time there, but they have accuracy. There's a better version in perception now. Lifesteal, there's a better version as well. But it's still, you know, good, especially for the early game. Speed's going to be good no matter where you are in the game. Toxic is actually utilized a decent amount now, especially in solo builds. There's a Toxic UDK build out there. Destroy is still decent for Scarab King, although very niche. And then Avenging isn't that bad, but it's kind of weird now. 45% to counterattack when a debuff is placed on the wearer. I don't know. How do you guys feel about that Avenging rework or nerf or buff? I don't know. Stalwart is good too. 30% less damage taken from AoE attacks. Okay, so who are the champions for Dragon's Lair where we really care a lot about poison, right? So epic champions only here, guys. We're gonna start with
the money.
By the way, I'm gonna start with a champion who's obviously amazing, a 5 out of 5 in all of these dungeons, maybe with the exception of Spider, but it's Seer. I'm not gonna choose Seer for every team or every dungeon. I'm just gonna give her a massive shout out at the beginning of the video. It's not even an honorable mention. It's just Seer is the queen of Raid Shadow Legends. You are the goddess of Raid Shadow Legends. You saved millions of players so much time over the years, and we love you and we thank you, Seer.
Let me... Paralyzed from the waist down and dead.
Sorry for anybody watching who doesn't have Seer. That must have been an infuriating little segment there. Dragon. Let's start with one of my absolute favorites, and you could say he can be utilized in all 3 dungeons as well, or probably 4 dungeons as well, excuse me, and it's Dark Kale. Dark Kale, who you get from Doom Tower Normal. This guy is amazing. Truly a legendary in an epic skin in this game. He's got a triple hitter on his A1. Each hit has a chance of instantly activating 2 poisons or a poison and an HP burn on it, which is amazing, right? Very, very good. A boss killer extraordinaire with that A1. On the A2, Blinding Darkness is an AoE with decreased attack, which is great for the dragon, great for pretty much everywhere in this game. Each critical hit is also increasing the duration of all debuffs on the target by 1 turn, which parlays very nicely with the A1 where we're instantly activating. So we're also extending those durations. On the A3, we get not 1, not 2, but 3 poisons and a poison sensitivity on the target. Get excited when I talk about Dark Kale on a 3-turn cooldown. I mean, what more do you want? Oh, you want mitigated crit rate because it hits very hard and the boss only has a 15% crit rate? Well, he's got that too, as long as they're under 2 or more poisons. This dude is a proverbial, overused, annoying phrase, cheat code in Dragon. Dragon hard, Dragon normal, you name it, Dark Kale is your dude. Next up, man, I feel like I'm getting rid of all the goodies right on Dragon's Lair, but it's gonna be a Kemptum. Ooh, 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 I love a Kemptum, man. He is a top 5, in my mind, a top 5 overall epic in the game. He's got a triple hitter on his A1, each hit placing a poison. If they're under Hex, he's got a debuff spread, nice for the waves. On the A2, he's got another triple hitter. This time it's an AoE on a 3-turn cooldown. Each hit extending the duration of Hex, which is so good in the game. It's funny, 2 years ago, we were talking about Hex like it was the crappiest thing known to man. And I called it way back then. I'm like, someday Hex is going to be really good. And a couple of you guys in the comments were like, keep dreaming, Ash. Well, now it's really good. It is. If enemies are not under Hex, he's going to be placing the Hex on this ability, incredibly dependable. And then on his passive, Hex Blood has a 100% chance of inflicting damage from 1 poison debuff to enemies under Hex whenever their allies receive damage from poison debuffs. So my man's placing poisons, he's placing hexes, he's got a lot of damage, he's got speed in all battles as well. I love a Kemptum, man. What a beast, especially in other areas of the game. You can pretty much use this dude to out-damage Legos with the triple hitter, the cool passive, the A1. I really love, can you tell? I really love a Kemptum.
You can move forward now.
Okay, next up, guys, is going to be, I was going to call him an old school champion, but he's not that old, Ash. It's Uragrim. Uragrim is still incredibly good. He's got solid base stats, easy to keep alive. He's a support champion. He's got poison on his A1. On his A2, he's got a cleanse from an ally in a heal on a 3-turn cooldown. Granted, it's a 1 ally, but it's still nice to have because you need to cleanse off all those poisons from the dragon anyway. On the A3, we got 2 poisons on all enemies, and then we have the continuous heal on allies, plus the 20% speed in all battles on the aura. This dude is a great blend of poison and, or poison damage, excuse me, and support vis-a-vis the heals, vis-a-vis the cleanse. He's like the modern day Steel Skull, who used to be good back in the day. Now he's kind of power crept, in my opinion. Kind of the epic version, in a way, of like a Bad El Khazar type champion, right? He's very, very good. Love that speed aura. He got a nerf like the 2nd week he was released.
It was the saddest thing to happen in the town that I can remember.
But he's still good even after the nerf. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
Thanks for making me feel better.
Now this is an old school champion, and I have him on the list here, and I mean it. It's Taurus. Taurus, man. For an old school dude, he's got a heal if the target's under poison, which is nice, right? He's got a big version of Weaken as well on a 3-turn cooldown, exactly what we want on Tendon Slash. And then the Toxic Nova, we're placing 4 poisons on a 4-turn cooldown. 4 big versions of poison. Again, we love poison, and Taurus has us covered. He's also sacrificing 99% of his HP, but the good news is he has 2 turns of unkillable for you guys to heal him up after said HP sacrifice, which isn't that challenging as long as you have a support champion or 2, like maybe an Uragrim on the team, right? So Taurus is definitely a fantastic source of poisons. Now, this last slot here, guys, it was tough. It was tough. I could have gone a number of different ways, and I decided to go with another Doom Tower champion. I was going to give it, I should say, honorable mention really quickly. I'm not going to go over a kit, but I was actually going to give it to Urtakata, who I think is a really cool champ. But instead of Urtakata, I decided to give it to Taya. So Taya is a Shadowkin epic. Where is she? Here she is. She's another Doom Tower champion. She has a decreased accuracy on the A1, which definitely comes in handy. 60% land rate, which is solid. She's a triple hitter. Each hit on a 3-turn cooldown, placing a poison. So that's 3 big versions of poison on her A2 ability. And then she attacks an enemy on her A3, 3-turn cooldown, instantly activating poison and burns on the target with the heal reduction. So again, the instant activation plus the triple poisons on the A2, I mean, and decreased accuracy. She's a very underutilized, I will say, even by players who have her. I feel like a lot of players get her in Doom Tower and they're like, I don't know, reviews are mixed on her. She does have her best score in Dragon's Lair, though, to be fair. Let's go ahead and bolster that a little bit. She's really good in Dragon's Lair, so I wanted to give a shout out to Taya, include her as my 5th champion. Let's move over to Ice Golem. So Ice Golem's peak used to be the worst dungeon to farm, and now it's, well, it's far from the worst, right? Retaliation is a great 2-piece set to counterattack when hit 15%. Reflex is very in vogue on champions especially who have 2 active skills. They're A1 and only 1 skill on cooldown. The 40% goes right to that. Cursed is now very good. 50% chance to place a Hex for 2 turns, especially on champions with an AoE on the A1. Provoke is often utilized in Hydra Clan Boss as well. Crit rate can be beneficial in the early game, so can resistance in the early and mid game. And then, well, then we have some basic sets. But overall, it's not a bad dungeon anymore. So we need a lot of sustainability, and there's a lot of buffs and debuffs that can be useful in Ice Golem's peak. I want to start with my favorite debuffer for Ice Golem, right? So as I said, Ice Golem can hit very hard, especially if his minions are alive. They will ignore your defense, and he can wipe out your entire team. So you're going to need a debuffer. You're going to need a debuffer who can probably take a hit. That's why I went with Duck the Pierced, another champion that I feel like people don't talk about enough in this game. Duck the Pierced is great, man. On his A1, he has a decreased accuracy, 50% land on each hit. On the A2, it's an AoE, decreased attack and decreased defense. And the reason I chose him instead of some of the other guys who have this ability, aka one other guys, because I chose him on the next dungeon, but he's got the decreased attack and decreased defense as long as it's a critical hit. That's a debuffer with the 2 most imperative debuffs, especially for Ice Golem, on the same ability on a 3-turn cooldown. He also has a provoke on his A3, a chance at provoking 2 enemies, which is a nice to have. Plus, he has Reflect and Unkillable on himself, just helping to keep him alive. Now, some players shut this ability off, others keep it on. I've seen even unorthodox builds where they can build him in said Reflex set, shut off that A3, and then try to get the decreased attack, decreased defense to stay up pretty much all the time. Defense and faction crisp by 31% on Duck the Pierce. He's a defense-based champion, which is why I have him on the list here. He's easier to keep alive, even despite the fairly low HP at 16k, just shy of 16k there. But the defense definitely makes up for it, and he can take a punch, which is great, plus the damage mitigation, plus the decreased defense. All right, next up, guys, you know I made a whole dedicated video on this champion. This is how much I love my Celiac Priest Ornn. Man, I really dig this dude. One of my favorite epics released in the last year or so. He's an HP-based champion with a lot of HP. On his A1, he's got poisons, a big version. Granted, a small land rate at 25%, 30 with sniper. It does have a chance at landing on each hit, though, which is nice. He has another 2-time hitter, instantly activating poisons on the target. So you're probably asking at this point, Ash, why are you not using Ornn on Dragon? Well, you certainly could. You certainly could. The reason I like him, again, I chose him for Ice Golem is because he can still do a ton of damage. He still brings important utility to your team, but he can also solo Ice Golem. He can also take those big hits because he's an HP-based champion, which is why I used him here and like a Dark Kale on Dragon, because he's a lot squishier, and I feel like you need that extra survivability unless you have a really robust defensive team around them, or a support system, I should say, around them. Either way, I digress. He has an AoE with 2 poisons and a poison sensitivity on his A3 with a heal for each poison on himself. This is all again on a 3-turn cooldown. Whenever a poison debuff is activated on an enemy, it increases his HP and defense by 5%, stacks up to 25%. So again, in that final battle, he's going to be building more survivability into himself. I really love my Celiac Priest Ornn. I think he's... do I really want to say this? Is he the best? Well, certainly in terms of damage, you can make the case that he is the best Sylvan Watcher epic in the game. But there's some good other candidates out there too, some of which we'll talk about in a bit. Ice Golem, the next one is going to be none other than...
Hello
My
there.
game's slowing up. Oh, they wanted to show me a pop-up. They wanted to show me a pop-up. That's what it was.
But Dad!
It's Vogoth, guys. Vogoth. I mean, we talked about it, you know, several times now, but my man Vogoth, he's a beast. He's got the heal on the passive. He's got the leech on the other passive. If the attacker's under provoke, he's got a chance of increasing their cooldowns. Great control, sneaky control champion. Well, not even that sneaky. He's got an AoE freaking provoke. How sneaky can he be, right? He's good, got really good control. He's got a triple hitter on his A1 as well, extending the duration of a random debuff on the target. But of course, it's all about that healage, right? It's all about the festering dynamo on this champion. That big AoE attack comes in, boom, he can heal up your team. Obviously, positioning on your team is going to be important in terms of where they are on that, you know, team page to make sure that he can soak up that damage before everybody else is hit or after everybody else is hit. It's really depending on where you want to put your squishiest champions around Vogoth. Check out my video on why rotation matters, why positioning matters, if you want to get the full, you know, scoop on why it matters where we put Vogoth or ally protect champions or other champions with interesting passives that are doing something upon their being hit, right? Like a Kayaku or a Seeker, for example. Anyway, Vogoth is great. Next up, guys, we didn't have to go anywhere. We didn't have to go anywhere, Ash. It is, do you think I was going to make a video without my girl? It's Dark Elhain. Dark Elhain, aka the Gatling gun, the machine gun on Ice Golem, because she has this Death Majesty, which is great because it has a decreased speed on it, right? 75% land rate on a 3-turn cooldown is very good. She brings her own increased attack as well. Nice damage from this champion, but she's filling this champion's turn meter by 25% and instantly activating the Death's Majesty without putting it on cooldown whenever this champion or an ally receives a freeze. Moreover, if she receives a freeze, she's going to instantly remove it and replace it with increased crit damage, crit rate, or strengthen. I mean, come on. Come on. I should say and strengthen, not or. Very, very good. She can just sit back. You can build her slow, attack percentage on the boots if you want to, and just let her hammer away every time a freeze lands against the Ice Golem. You just gotta keep her alive. She's slow at 94 and squishy at 804 defense. So it's nice to have a shield champion or the likes on the team. Shield champion coming up pretty soon, but I would give him a big honorable mention in Ice Golem as well, but we'll stay tuned for Spider to hear the guy that I'm thinking of. Can any of you guess? Well, first we have last but not least an Ice Golem, and that's going to be Sylar. Sylar. She's great, guys. If you have not tried out Sylar, she's an older school champion in the game. On the A1, she's got an AoE. On the A2, another AoE with decreased accuracy, good for the minions of Ice Golem. And then her best ability, and again, you can make the case she belongs on the Spider list. She's just a really S-tier control champion, especially for an epic out there who frankly hasn't really been power crept much, which is more than you can say about a lot of epics in the game. She got a decreased speed on all enemies for 2 turns and decrease their turn meter by 40%. Very, very powerful. Leaden legs indeed, right? The name is perfectly appropriate for the ability there. So great control with the decreased accuracy and some damage to boot. That is Sylar. She's good at, again, kind of controlling both the Ice Golem with the A3 and those minions, plus the decreased accuracy on the AoE. So I wanted to give her a shout out in Ice Golem. I think she's really, really cool. All right, guys, time to move over to Fire Knight. All right, guys, so Fire Knight's castle, I mean, still the most farmed dungeon in the endgame. You ask endgame players where they farm the most, it's going to be Fire Knight, right? For Savage Gear. Savage Gear and Lethal Gear, two of the most sought after sets for damage dealers in this game. We also have Stun, we also have Regeneration, we have Frenzy, we have Crit Damage, Shield, Immunity, Curing, Fury. So, I mean, I'm a fan of Curing Gear. It's niche, but I'm still a fan of it. Immunity, not so much. Shield, not so much with Bolster, but you can definitely still get utility out of it, especially if you're, not progressing or focusing too much on the Forge Pass or even doing it. Crit damage is going to be very good, especially in the end game, but really anywhere in the game. And again, Regeneration is the solo set that's most sought after in the game, and we talked about the rest. Stun in the end game, in Doom Tower specifically, in the rooms. I mean, Fire Knight is where it's at to spend a lot of your energy and time farming. Okay, so who are we going to talk about when we talk about Fire Knight champions? Well, obviously, we're going to start with the GOAT of Fire Knight, right? And you know who she is. It's Allure, right? Allure has arguably the best control ability for Fire Knight normal, not Fire Knight hard, unfortunately. It's a triple hitter, decrease the target's turn meter by 25% on each critical hit. This is so powerful that some people even use her anti-affinity into a Force Affinity Fire Knight because it's still that good even if we're not landing all 3 hits. Little pro tip for you guys, shut off the A2 and the A3 on the Fire Knight and just hammer away with her A1 to be the ultimate control ability on Fire Knight normal. Next up, guys, going to be a debuffer who I alluded to earlier in the video. It's none other than Mr. Stag Knight. Stag Knight, I mean, listen, I gave Duck a lot of credit for being super tanky. My man Stag Knight has 21k HP himself. He's also incredibly fast, 10 speed faster than Duck the Pierced at 107 with still over 1000 defense. He has a double hitter with decreased speed on his A1, which we love for Fire Knight. We love decreased speed. It's a 50% chance of landing on each hit. Tremendous, very dependable. And AoE with decreased defense, decreased attack. It's at a 95% land rate, but if you pick up Sniper, which is pretty mandatory for this champion, mastery-wise, tier 5 on the support tree, he's going to be landing both of these debuffs. You love it. He also has increased accuracy on an ally for 1 turn every time an ally has a debuff resisted by an enemy. Little trivia, the first champion in the game to receive an increased accuracy buff, albeit on his passive. So Stag Knight definitely makes our list. Next one, guys, is going to be a champion who I've maxed out, but I actually have not played a ton, but it's Fenshi. There's no denying how good this dude can be inside Fire Knight. On the A1, triple hitter, each hit 40% chance of placing that decreased speed for 2 turns. Again, very dependable, especially with Sniper, and for the reasons we just spoke about on Stag Knight, we love landing that decreased speed on the Fire Knight because that's going to prevent him from getting his shield back up. It's really a one of the most important debuffs to have on Fire Knight. Another triple hitter, each hit with a 75% chance of decreasing the target's turn meter by 15% on a 2-turn cooldown. 2-turn cooldown.
Okay, it's 4, David. 4.
Look at this.
I mean, come on. He's got the turn meter reduction and the decreased speed, and then a double hitter with a poison on the A3. I mean, very exceptionally good control. Really second to 1, I guess, Allure on the A1 and the A2 combined. So shout out to Fenshi. Definitely makes the list. Now, you might be asking, Ash, this is all fine and well, but I'm worried. I'm tackling Fire Knight hard right now. Well, that's why Croydon the Blue makes the list, man. This guy's very, very good. We said that Ornn was the best. Well, Croydon certainly is right there in the conversation, guys. A lot of people sleep on this guy, but he's exceptionally good, even outside of just Fire Knight hard. He's got a triple hitter with a 35% chance of placing a freeze on each hit on his A1. You can pair this dude with Newt, or maybe a Yakarl, or maybe all 3 of them, and you have some excellent control because remember, freeze acts as a turn meter reducer on Fire Knight hard. On the A2, it's a double hitter with a 65% chance of placing more freeze on an AoE on a 3-turn cooldown. I mean, they didn't make champions like this back in my day. This is a very, very good ability everywhere. Again, Fire Knight especially. He's got increased speed, big version, on all allies, and a turn meter fill of all allies by 15% on a 3-turn cooldown on his A3. Blessing of the Blue. Man, this guy is very good. In my head, I thought it was a 4-turn. I thought it was 5 booked down to 4, but it's a 3-turn. I mean, that's very exceptional, right? Fills his champion's turn meter by 5% for each freeze debuff placed by this champion, so more turn meter fill built into his passive. He's just really, really good. Fire Knight hard especially. But guys, the last Fire Knight champion that we're going to mention today, and there's a lot of honorable mentions in Fire Knight, there's a lot of good epics there, but I'm going to give it to Ruella. She's very fast, 112 speed. One of the fastest epics out there in the game, actually. She's a triple hitter. Each critical hit has a 100% chance of stealing 5% of the target's turn meter. So a 15% turn meter steal is great on the Fire Knight. Remember, we want decreased speed. We want a lot of turn meter reduction. On the A2, another triple hitter with decreased defense, weaken, and decrease speed. Downside is it's a 4-turn cooldown. Upside is it's basically the 3, arguably the 3 most important debuffs all in one ability against the Fire Knight. I mean, that's really good. Fills the turn meter of all allies by 20% and places an increased crit rate on all allies for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. So now she's got a turn meter boost of 20% on the 3-turn as well as the increased crit rate. So that is the top 5: Stag Knight, Allure, Fenshi, Croydon, and Ruella. Let's move over to Spider. So Spider's Den, obviously we're here for our accessories and our silver. I don't know about you, but nowadays I find myself spending more time just trying to get silver than I do caring about accessories, even though of course I still care. But it's really the best place, the only place arguably to efficiently, or at least most efficiently, silver farm in this game. They need like a silver dungeon or something. That way, I don't know, we have some dedicated space, right? That gives better rewards for our energy. I don't know about you guys, but I saved, another one of my favorite debuffers for Spider, right? And that is going to be none other than Deacon Armstrong. So Deacon Armstrong has the speed in all battles aura of 19%. He's got a leech on the A1. He's got a decreased defense on the A2. And then he has that turn meter fill and turn meter decrease, both of which are going to be really good in Spider with the extra turn as well. Ergo, the ability to potentially keep decreased defense up on all the Spiderlings and the Spider Mother basically all the time until you kill them or burn them or whatever you're doing. So I gave it to Stag Knight.
How dare you?
Or excuse me, to Deacon Armstrong.
How dare you?
Come on, Ash. All right, next, this is a champion who, I actually initially had Royal Guard listed as a Fire Knight top 5, but then I moved him to Spider because of his A3 on Fire Knight. It's a 4-time at random, 3-turn cooldown when booked. Each hit has a 75% chance of placing decreased speed. Each hit has a 75% chance of decreasing the target's turn meter by 25%. God, that's a good ability, man. That is a really good ability. Did I say 3-turn, 4-turn cooldown there? He has a decreased defense on his A1, but really the takedown, man. Nothing beats takedown, right? For Spider, especially if you don't have all the OP, Acrisias and Newts in the world. I mean, Royal Guard and Husk, they still got it, right? But Royal Guard does a little bit more damage than Husk, so I gave it to Royal Guard. Honorable mention to Husk out there. Takedown is still the Spider killing ability up to stage 20 in the game, and certainly can use him in Spider Hard as well. Next up is going to be, I alluded to him earlier too, and man, I'm sure nobody, or not a lot of you guys at least, had this guy on your list, but I'm going to give a little shout out, not a little, a big shout out to Miscreated Monster. Maybe I'm just in the Halloween spirit, guys, but oh, Miscreated, dude. I love this guy in Ice Golem as well. He just got a great shield. The shield does damage, or the shield strength, is based on the damage that we deal, right? So as long as we build them to do a little bit of damage, all of those Spiralings, we add it all up and they get this really beefy shield, really one of the better ones out there because of the number of targets that he's attacking. But there's more. He's got a 50% stun. He also has a stun on the A1, a decreased defense on the A1, an ally protect, a continuous heal, or a heal on this champion and a continuous heal on a 4-turn cooldown, and then he has control as well. Man, this guy has a really robust kit that I feel like people don't talk about him certainly as much as they used to years ago, but I'm still a massive fan of this champion. Certainly can be utilized in a bunch of areas in the game. You can even even utilize this guy in the arena. He's a sneaky good champion, especially in Spider. I'm going to go with my favorite burner in the game, guys, and I mentioned this a couple times, my favorite epic burner in the game for Spider, and it's Skrank. Now, massive shout out to Mordecai. I didn't want to include a bunch of burners. There's a god, like Akoff the Seer is another one. There's a lot of good burners out there for epics, but Skrank is my favorite, mainly because it doesn't matter the affinity, right? He's void affinity. You don't have to worry about the affinity of the Spider that you're attacking. He's got a weaken on his A1 as well. The big version, it increases to 75% chance if they're under a burn. So now he's also bringing weaken, which you can't say about those other burners out there. He's got a 2-time hitter with an increased attack on himself as long as the target's under a burn. He's healing himself on that same ability. He's got an AoE with the burn on a 3-turn cooldown with more turn meter fill as long as one enemy is hit with a critical hit. Not a very high threshold to meet. And then it all comes together with Pyromania. His passive increases his champion's attack and crit damage by 5% every time a burn triggers on an enemy. So we're guaranteed to get that 25% extra damage sooner rather than later. Listen, I love Skrank. I think that he is if you're looking for a solid Spider burner, I think he's going to be your guy if you have him, right? If not, again, I am a big fan of Mordecai, but I think that Skrank wins out, especially because of the affinity. All right, next up, guys, is going to be actually the last champion on our list, guys. And I'm not sure if anybody saw this one coming, but it's actually Achak the Wenderin. I have a soft spot for Achak the Wenderin because I've been using him on my mini account. Basically, he was one of my first epics pulled. I built him not knowing exactly how much I'd be using him. Of course, I had used him as kind of a team with Mordecai in the past on my main account, but man, this guy's a hard carry in a lot of places on the account, surprisingly, including, most importantly, Spider. So what is he doing? He's got well, you can read his A1. It's not a bad A1, but I'm not going to read the whole thing. The bad news is he's got a lot of books, you can see here. 9 levels on the A1. Luckily, only 1 on the A2, and a lot on the A3. He's bringing block debuffs and is strengthened on all allies. It's the big version of strengthened on a 4-turn cooldown. It's a really nice buff to have on your team. We really want to book that down, which is unfortunate because of all this crap, right? Anyway, an AoE attack. We have a, 90% chance of placing a freeze debuff for 1 turn on enemies whose attack is higher than their defense, aka all of the Spiderlings. He's a great freezer. Otherwise, placing a burn on enemies whose defense is equal to or higher than his attack. On the passive, though, it all comes together. Again, heals all allies. No cooldown here, right? Heals all allies by 5% of their max HP every time an enemy under a burn gets a turn. That makes him the best healer for Spider, right? Fills his champion's turn meter of all, fills the turn meter of all allies by 10% every time an enemy under a freeze gets a turn. So you open up with that freeze, you freeze whatever, 10 Spiderlings. I mean, you're getting almost a full turn meter fill on allies as soon as they're getting a turn. That is like a motor, an engine that keeps your team going both in heals and in turn meter. Plus, what do you want to do to spiders who are burned? You want to CC them, and he's got the freeze in there too. And freeze, I actually like better than stun in a lot of cases in Spider because we don't want to kill the Spiderlings. We want them to stay alive, and freeze has a built-in damage mitigation, which usually plays against you. But in this case, on a burn team, we want them to stay alive and just remain CC'd so we can keep burning them, right? Obviously, depending on when the mother's going to eat them and heal herself and stuff like that. But, I really just love this kit. It all comes together beautifully, and I'm a big fan, if you couldn't tell, of Achak the Wenderin, and he also has a defense in all battles aura by 25%. Guys, stay tuned for the Sand Devil, for the Iron Twins, and for the Phantom Shogun Grove, top epics as well. Let me know if I snubbed anybody or included anybody that you just don't agree with on these top 5 epic specialists for all of the old school dungeons in the game. I'll see you in the next one, guys. Thank you for watching till the end, and as always, take care, guys.